So listening to the titles of those papers, I recognize that this is going to be a little bit more of a fun journey looking at our students. And sometimes we don't spend enough time thinking about who our students are. Excuse me, let me just get this real quick. Or maybe not, you'll just have to see a hole there. But so we're going to look at who they are, where they're going, what's happening in the universe in the next 10 years, and how this is going to affect what we do in classrooms as leadership, in classrooms from, I'm leaving from here to go to Beijing in a couple days, from all over the world. So this is just not a US thing, this is worldwide. Now, how many of you happen to be users of Twitter for education? That's not enough, but good for you. If you happen to be using it, see, I don't use it to follow Kim Kardashian or LeBron James. I use it to follow other great educators, and it's how I learn everything. But if you happen to be using it and you hear something today that resonates with you, I would love if you could use the hashtag for this conference. Also, my Twitter handle, so I can see what resonates and maybe have a conversation with you outside of the four walls of this place. So I'd love if you would do that, and we're going to start and go through a little journey about learning and Gen Z. But we're going to start with Gen X. Is there anyone in here who learned like this?
C, D, F.
Maybe a little higher.
F. 3 weeks we've been talking about the Platt Amendment.
Now, I don't know if any of you learned like this, but I learned like this. I learned with a teacher giving me multiple choice questions, passing it back out, telling people what they got for their grade. And it was a little bit of an anomaly for me. It's kind of why I became a teacher. I looked at teachers like this and said to myself, this can be done better. So when it came time for me to choose a career, I chose teaching because I knew it didn't have to look like this. And I knew when I chose teaching, I instead wanted it to look like this, and I wanted the Dead Poets Society Captain, oh Captain moment in my classroom. And everything I did, I thought to myself, is this going to be the one where the kids stand on the table and yell, Miss Clark, you're Captain, oh Captain. And I was thinking, I'm going to find a way. And I started teaching in the late 90s. And in the late 90s, there was something coming out called the internet. And I thought to myself, this might just be that Captain, oh Captain thing that I might use in my classroom to redo how we're doing classrooms. And so I ran off to school at Columbia University in New York City, and I got my master's in technology and education, and I came back to school night. And I was at back to school night in the Silicon Valley. That's where I was teaching at the time. And at back to school night, I said to parents, oh man, I'm so excited about what technology is going to be able to do. And you need to know that the year right now is the year 2000 when I'm saying this. And I say, I made a website for kids. We're going to go to the computer lab, and I can't wait. And later that night, while I'm talking to parents, someone taps me on the shoulder. Now remember, I'm in the Silicon Valley, so somebody who owns a big, giant company happens to be a parent of one of the students in my class and says to me, Ms. Clark, I'm going to get you a computer for every kid in this classroom. Now this wasn't called a one-to-one because there was no such thing yet, and there was no Wi-Fi, so when he brought those computers, they were e-machines, and they had to be Ethernet connected at the perimeter of my classroom. So if you think your IT people don't like you, you should have been me in the year 2000 when I said, hey, I'm getting 26 computers. But the computers, he said, is it okay if they show up tomorrow? And I'm like, okay, that'll be fine. And the next day, someone knocked on my door with a pallet of e-machines. And as they're taking them off, I look at my students, and they're like, what's happening? And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you. You get a computer, and you get a computer, and you get a computer. And the kids were like, what? This can't be happening. We're all getting computers. And they acted the way we have seen happen in the US here on Oprah's favorite thing show when she gave things away. And this is how my students responded when they learned that they were each getting a computer in those early years. But in the excitement of looking at my students, I got another tap on the shoulder, and the guy who was delivering them said, "Here, I have something for you." And it was a note. And it said, "Dear Miss Clark, here's my contribution. Show the world what technology can do for education. No pressure." I was like, okay, this is great. I should probably not have said yes to this. But at the time, in this early on stage, there was no Twitter. There were no people blogging. If there were people writing these great articles, I didn't know how to find them unless I went to the library. And so I was out there doing things on my own, and I knew right then and there when they gave me that note, I had to change my mindset. And I had to let the students lead the way. And that's hard for some people. And so because I was sitting in the Silicon Valley, when I had these connected computers and I sent kids home to do stuff, when I said, hey, we're going to go, and there was no YouTube yet, people. We couldn't even be on YouTube. But when we were in chat rooms and doing stuff like that, because I had hip parents, nobody was like, oh, stay off, don't be online with my kids, don't do this. They were like, let's try it. I can't believe you're doing this. We're going to come in and watch. And so I was in this really important bubble where I could do stuff that most people can't do, and the parents were behind me 100%. And you have to imagine what I saw. Instead of being compliant learners sitting in desks looking at me, my students were out investigating and challenging and learning to make meaning of the world. And instead of being taught answers, my students were out asking questions, and they now had the means to find the answer. And instead of me being in charge of the learning environment, they were learning to think and to question and to make meaning of their own. And this came from 12-year-olds. These were 7th graders, people, who rose to the occasion and did things that made me, at the end of the day, sometimes cry because it was so powerful. And I go to schools right now where some don't even have devices for kids yet, or they have a cart that they share amongst each other, and it's 2019. It's amazing to me that in some places we haven't made that change. And so I grew up in my teaching environment smack dab in the middle of an information revolution, just like all of you, which is exciting and scary at the same time. Exciting because we have access to information never before seen in human history. And scary because how does this play out when we need to get kids into top colleges? Let's be real, that's what parents want. And I don't know how much you've been keeping up with what's going on in the world, but next year, in 2020, and if you're not paying attention right now, you need to pay attention. In 2020, that 4G that sits on your phone is going to turn to 5G, and it will have speeds 600 times faster. I hope you heard that. 600 times faster. If you have an Alexa or a Google Home at home, they're going to get a flux capacitor of change. The world is going to change, and there's someone I follow. I follow everything he does. His name is Peter Diamandis, and if you don't know this gentleman, you should write him down, and there's a podcast called Exponential Wisdom you should go binge listen to. I guess that's becoming a thing. And Peter Diamandis says, in the next century, the change that this 5G will bring to us means that we are only seeing right now 1% of the change we will see in the next century. This is going to hit your classrooms. Kai-Feng Lee out of China, who wrote AI Superpowers, says that the difference between right now and the end of next century will be equivalent to the difference of having electricity and not. This is huge. And I don't think people are paying close enough attention because we can't wrap our head around 600 times faster. What does that mean? I'm walking my dog the other day and I'm thinking, I probably have no idea what that is. But what will happen with AI is going to be so big that we now need to teach kids how to approach things differently. And we're going to look at that today a little bit. I'm not going to be able to tell you about AI because no one knows what's going to happen there. I even asked Alexa and Google yesterday what's going to happen, and they didn't know. They said, I can't help you. So they don't even know yet either. But what we need to do is understand that our classrooms can't be incubators of memorization anymore. We have to allow kids to explore and fall in love with problem solving so that one day a kid in your class or in your school or in your university might ask the right question about cancer. Someone hasn't asked the right question yet, and be the person who finds the answer. These are the kids that's what we need kids to be able to do. So to do that, we have to know who our students are. They're Gen Z. The kids that are in like first grade, second grade, third grade, those are Alpha Gen, actually. We are working with 2 different generations right now. But let's take a look at Gen Z. Gen Z are the first kids to be born into a world with smartphones, tablets, and computers. And they're not as much tech savvy as they are tech dependent. And technology is invisible to them. We have to remember, though, it's only technology when you're not born with it. So to us, we talk technology. To them, they're like, what? Where's the technology? We are not here at a phone conference on how to answer a phone because we all know that's technology that we were born with. So we are here to learn about devices. But to these kids, they're ubiquitous. They're the most technically savvy, well, they're not so technically savvy, but they're most socially networked, globally connected generation in history. And we take them into classrooms and have them memorize facts most of the time. Not all the time in some great schools that I've seen. Their phones are their hub of their social lives, but they don't do phone calls, they do texts, and they really don't do texts, they do snaps. I interviewed all of my high schoolers the other day to say, what social media do you use? And it was resoundingly Snapchat and Instagram. And Facebook, a few of them were on for their grandparents, which made me feel great. And Twitter is for Donald Trump. Sorry for international people that I brought that up. Anyway, so what's important about these kids is that it's not that they have technology, it's that we use it to inspire deep work and deep learning. Not to have them typing papers on their device. They could do that in 1985. We need to inspire these other skills. And it's not that they have the devices, it's that it's sharpened their thinking, it's redefined community, it has made them globally connected, and it is the core of their learning. And we have to understand this for these kids that sit in our class. We didn't learn in this environment. So it's very hard to go into a teaching environment and teach in a way that gets at their ubiquitous information, their abundance of information. It's hard to do that when we didn't learn that way. They don't consume on 2 devices. They consume on 5. And what's funny to me is that they don't understand that when I was a kid, when a hamburger came to the table, I ate it. I didn't take a picture and hashtag it and throw it up on Instagram and snap it with little ears. I just ate that thing. And to them, objects have behaviors. If you say, okay, Google, something answers. And Peter Diamandis in this podcast that I'm obsessed with, they talk about that we're all going to have an AI shell that follows with us. Maybe it's our phone, maybe it's something, I don't know what it looks like, but that is going to be answering questions for us all the time. Last night I was watching TV in the hotel room, and I usually have Google Home right next to me, and Alexa does my TV for me. And I wanted to ask a question about what I was watching, and I was like, oh my God, they don't have Google Home here. This hotel room is so boring. Like I had to get my phone and pick it up and ask. That was so hard for me. That's where we're going, and that's who these kids are. So we need to understand them. But a lot of times we talk, and I go to a lot of conferences and a lot of schools, and we're always talking about internet safety. And that's important, but I think this is why.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon,
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Has you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1.
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12, 95.
Yes.
Got it.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
So, I mean, Gen Z, they do need a little help, but it's so much more than teaching them to be safe online, which we need to keep doing. But it's about understanding what they think of us. Now, I look at this, and I think this to myself, how did I graduate without Google? And why did someone do that to me? Why did I have to be born when I was born? Oh my gosh. But Gen Z, let's take a really cute look, actually, at who they are as learners from this great video out of Brisbane. If you could turn it up a little.
Generation Z. The kids have an attention span of 8 seconds. Is it possible to communicate anything in 8 seconds? Let's give it a try.
So who are we? Well, we're the kids born after 1995, born into a post-9/11 world. When the war on terror started, we were starting school.
We're younger than Google, the first generation to have grown up with social media. We consume in 8-second bites. To us, 30 seconds is an eternity.
I don't think I would have been able to live without Google and the internet.
We live more through devices than we do actual interaction.
A nightmare? Not if you know them.
Gen Y grew up in a time of plenty, but the uncertainty of the noughties changed all of that.
Gen Z is a new species. We're not called Tony or Shelley or Kevin. We're called Logan and Romeo and Malala.
We don't consume on 2 screens, we use 5. No text, highly visual. To everyone else, the way we function seems like so random, but to us, it's as natural as breathing.
We don't have a lot of faith in experts. We're not interested in the wisdom of the grey hairs. We just want to get it off Google or from our peers.
Some say we're fickle, but we do have our good points. We're highly connected, and we're not just tech savvy, it's in our genes, or should we say, our code. If you think we sound shallow, don't be fooled. We want to make a real difference to the world. Teen activists like Taliban shooting victim Malala Yousafzai are reaching out to millions.
So just when you thought you'd got your head around Gen Y, Gen Z comes along and changes everything. Every 8 seconds. Take any longer, they turn into Generation.
So they are a shorter attention span generation, but guess what? We're becoming that way too. And a lot of people say, well, that's the problem. We can't let this happen. But if you go back and you look at Socrates' time when they started writing, people were like, oh my God, they're going to start writing. No one's going to be able to tell stories. What's going to happen to our society? And they adjusted. And then the printing press came out, and people were like, oh my God, they're going to do this, and now we're not going to be able to write. No one's going to be writing. And we adjusted. And then the phone came out, and people thought because we had a phone in our kitchens that it would take away from family time and that people wouldn't talk to each other. But what we found out is that you could talk to your grandma and your aunt and uncles, and it actually made family time bigger and better, and we adjusted. And it's time, and you're going to have no choice next year at 5G. It's time that we adjusted. And instead of saying these kids have a short attention span, say, now what do we do with that? How do we get them to have that short attention span, but teach them the value of deep work and deep learning? What I love best about Gen Z is that they don't stand for the status quo. They know they have a stage. They know they have social media. We have some kids here in the United States. We have a little gun problem in the United States. We know about it, so if you want to talk to any of us and ask questions, feel free. But the kids in Florida, in Parkland, where my co-author teaches, she doesn't teach at Stoneman Douglas High School, but she teaches at the private school next to it. And those kids didn't stand for the status quo. They said, we're not taking it anymore. And kids today know that they can do that, and that's what I love about their generation. I wish I had lived in it. Or I am living in it, but I wish I had been one of them. So I want to introduce you to what happens when Gen Z meets this kind of environment. And this is Nick DeLucia. Nick DeLucia was sitting in his English class doing research and said to himself and the teacher, how come when I do research, I can't remember what the stuff is that I was looking up, and I want to just have a summary and see if it's the right thing and if the thing that I should go to and come back to later. And he's like, we need summaries. So he went home, he did some coding, he made an app, he talked to the right people, and he made an app called Sumly. Nick DeLucia, at the ripe old age of 16 or maybe even 15, sold that app to Yahoo for £30 million. That's what kids are doing today outside of our classrooms. I have a kid in my own school who's selling server space to other people because he happens to have a big server for $48,000 a month. Do any of you make that? He's 12. I don't. I'm going to get some server space, though. No. That's what they're doing. This is Bella Tipping from Australia. She's from Queensland, Australia, and she came here to well, not here, we're in Nevada, but to my state, California, and she was staying at Disneyland, and she was up in arms about the fact that every time she went somewhere, she got a kid's menu to eat, which included spaghetti, grilled cheese, and chicken fingers, and she was like, I don't want to eat like this. How come that's all I get? They rolled in a lumpy mattress into her parents' bedroom for her to stay on. And when she got back from LA to Queensland, she decided that she was going to start a website. And she went to her mom and said, Mom, I want to do a website for kids who travel. And her mom said, okay, make me a business plan. And outside of school, where a teacher's probably having her write a 5-paragraph essay about the importance of uniforms or not uniforms, she's creating a business. People have asked her to sell this website over and over again, and she doesn't want to because she's only 16 now, many years later. And I've heard that she's gotten offers of up to $10 million. That's what Gen Z can do. I didn't really have that opportunity as a kid. I could sell sea suckers for 25 cents at the playground if I wanted, but that was like the extent of my entrepreneurial skills. These kids have changed. The kids entering school this school year, 2018, will graduate in 2031. Do you remember me telling you that the next decade is going to be like electricity and not electricity? They will come out of our school system in that other side of this. They will go into retirement age in 2076. I can't even fathom what 2076 looks like. But I did some research to see what's coming, so let's look at a couple things that these kids will come out into. So we know that there's going to be self-driving cars. That's not a big deal. We know that. They haven't happened yet, but probably in the next 5 years, with this 5G being what it is, we'll see them for sure. But I'm about to tell you about another story that'll say to me maybe 2 years. Uber has already signed a contract with NASA to have flying taxis. Elon Musk is probably, I don't know how much you know about Elon Musk, but he's probably not happy about that because he thinks NASA is not innovating at all. And we'll talk about that in a second. But when I was in Dubai giving this keynote about a month ago, I saw this. This was a drone. This drone is a taxi. People sit in that. They are already doing it in Dubai. If there are any people in here from the United Arab Emirates, you've seen this. So it's already happening. And I wasn't going to be one of the first, I will admit it. But, and I learned that with iPhone. You got to wait one generation. But Elon Musk is creating a rocket. It's called the BFR. And since we're in Vegas, I'll tell you what BFR stands for. I won't tell you all of it, but it's big is the first part, rocket's the second. You can guess what the F stands for if you know Elon Musk at all. So in his BFR, his goal is by 2022 to be sending supplies to Mars, and by 2024 be sending people to live in some sort of greenhouse situation. I don't know what it looks like up there. He's going to use gas of methane because there's methane gas on Mars, and he doesn't understand why we're not using a different kind of gas, so that we could, in 5 years, be populating Mars. We know that as well, that our devices that we have, our wearable devices, will be controlled by thought. MIT is already making that happen. So I feel like a total James Bond when I go in and pay with my Apple Pay. Does anyone else use Apple Pay? And if I use it on my watch and I'm like, and I walk away, I feel like, yeah, 007, shaken, not stirred. But soon, that will be controlled by thought. I don't think we can wrap our head around that. We know that AI will take over so many things, so that's why deep learning, empathy, curiosity, we have the 4 C's. I don't understand how curiosity is not part of the 4 C's. But in case you don't know, it's not. Eric Schmidt of Google said that the 2 most important job skills that people have for when he hires them are resilience and curiosity, yet curiosity is not a 4 C. It's a miss for us as educators. And I've already told you about Elon Musk and the BFR, probably the only thing you'll remember, rocket. And the biggest problem that we're going to have in the 2030s is the supply of water. No longer gas, but the supply of water. It doesn't feel like it right now because we had a lot of rain in some parts of this, at least in my state in California. But I was in South Africa last year, and it was during the drought, and I was told at my hotel in Cape Town how I could shower, when I could shower, that I could not have the shower on while I was sudsing up. I had to have the water off. I had all of these limitations, and I got to look into the future that day. So this is the world that our kids will come into, and these are the jobs that they might have. This comes out of like World Bank data and what have you. But I like, if you look at this, I like chief listening officer. I would be good at that, I think. But chief listening officer is not a psychologist. It's someone who listens through social media to what's happening in the world and uses that to market. So we're going to use this right now to look inside of a classroom. When we know this about Gen Z, how do we make these changes and what do they look like in the classroom? So we're going to take a little look into that. And to do that, I want you to remember 2 words when you leave here. When you go back to your schools and you're like, oh my God, 5G, what are we going to do? I want you to remember these 2 things. Open, you need to be open, and flexible. And when I say open, I'm probably talking about something else than you might be thinking. So with open, I mean this. I mean now in this new world of 5G, we need to be open to shifting the focus from how we should teach. Instead of sitting down and saying students will be able to, you need to say, how does Johnny learn? And how can I give him an environment where he can learn best like that? In most instances, it's called personalized learning, though I'd like to take it one step further. And open to accepting that there are new literacies. So we talk a lot about reading and writing and math, but this is the new literacy that I think is super important. It's having kids be transliterate, fluent across all mediums of information, not just reading and writing. That means fluent in images, in videos, in social media, and being able to understand narrative and bias in these. That's how you fight fake news. And being able to tell a story and tell a story well, using one of these new forms of information. But I work in a school. This is nowhere in a standard that we're working with. This is not talked about at all. But we have kids who are entering into 2020. And we're failing them if we're not thinking about this. So what does it look like in this environment? And I'm going to take you to Oakland, California, one of my favorite stories because I lived in Chicago, and this is a little story kind of about Chicago. The person you can't see, and you'll see him in a minute because it'll be a video, is Connor. And Connor is 14 years old. And Connor walked into, is at a school where they do something called a Masterworks project, sort of like a passion project or 20% time project, where kids can go with something that they're passionate about. I taught in my teaching career 7th and 8th grade. So I know that kids run in to class all the time. They're like, oh, sports, yada, yada, I love, and the Rams are coming to LA and whatever. And I'd be like, okay, great, shut it down. We're reading The Giver. No more talking about that. But at this school in Oakland, they don't do that. They say, you have a passion? Well, we're going to give you some time to explore that. And Connor loved baseball. So Connor, for his passion project, decided he would create and listen to this word from a 14-year-old, an algorithm. Seems pretty important. An algorithm that would predict who would win the World Series. In 2016, and I know many of you are international, so let me explain to you. In 2016, in March, he predicted who would win the World Series that year. If you're not American and like baseball, you might not know that March is 1 month before we start the baseball season. Baseball season starts in early April. And in March, he predicted in 2016 that the Chicago Cubs would win the World Series. The Chicago Cubs, who had not won a World Series in 108 years. And so people, when they heard this, were probably like, great job, Connor. Nice work. So I'm going to show you what Connor did. Connor was transliterate. He's going to show you his project using data, using video to show you what he learned, and I'm giving you a snippet of this. But let's go look at what I think classrooms should look like with Connor's Masterworks project.
Statistics from all fields of baseball. Batting, pitching, fielding, and put them all up into one Connor curve. The Connor curve is a metric that I created. So this spreadsheet allows me to create all these algorithms that weight the numbers. So I gave pitching 50% of a team's success, batting 45% of a team's success, and fielding only 5% of a team's success. And now with these numbers we've generated, we can pick division winners, wildcard teams, and even the world champions. I predict that the winner of the National League will be the Chicago Cubs, the winner of the American League will be the Cleveland Indians, and the winner of the World Series will be the Chicago Cubs.
So what's important about this is the Chicago Cubs won, but they also played the Indians. He got it right smack dab to the exactness. And if you're a baseball fan, I personally think that was the best Game 7 ever in the history of the world, but that's because I'm a Chicago Cubs fan. But not only, it didn't stay, like in my day, if I had predicted this, people at my school would be like, cool, Holly, that was great. But it's 2000, and in this case, 16, it gets out there, and ESPN calls up Connor and says, hey, will you come be on the show and tell us how you predicted that? He gets his own Connor curve in the ticker. Can you imagine being 14, you're a sports fan, and you're asked to be on ESPN? You think Connor knows what he wants to do when he grows up? Does Connor even need college? I think he does because I'm into college. I love college. It's a rite of passage. People need to go. But he doesn't have to. And then next year when they asked him, who do you think is going to win the World Series or go to the World Series, he said, I think it's going to be the Dodgers. In case you don't know, that's who went. And I think it's going to be the Indians. And the Indians didn't go. It was Houston. But Houston went by 1 game. The next year, he got it right again. And I just feel like, I sat with kids like that and went, okay, we're reading Ricky Tikki Tavi. Hope you're going to like it. Like, how did I not get to and be open enough to allow them to do these Masterworks projects that take all learning from all subjects and combine? You can see he's great with green screen. He had to write a script. That's language arts. He had to do the math. How are we not all doing this? How do we all not have Connors? Because we need to be open. So the next thing, if we look at those job descriptions, Connor did these. Pretty cool. No one said, oh, the standard is you have to do those 3 and check off experienced engineer. It just happened. And that school in Oakland is getting their kids ready for 2030, in my opinion. Critical thinking, deeper learning, deeper thinking. David Price says in his book, Open, one of my favorite books, we need to understand how people learn when they have a choice and bring that into places where they are required to learn. I feel like education fails at this. And it's my personal kind of goal to make us rethink this. So let's go to flexible. I'm going to bring an example from my own classroom about being flexible. And I want you to think about being flexible with the curriculum. We've got a lot of curriculum. A lot of times people in international schools are doing some great IB stuff and maybe other things in other schools. But we have to be still, even if it's a great curriculum, we have to still be flexible. And I want to give you an example from when I was teaching my first year in San Francisco. Now, I'm not in the Silicon Valley. I'm in downtown San Francisco, and it's my first year teaching. So I get my job in August, and the school starts August 16th. I get my job August 13th. And so I'm living in Pacific Heights, which is this really great, beautiful area where all the stars live, and I'm living, because I'm a teacher, like I'm in the basement of someone's house underneath living in the cupboard. But, and that's the only way you can afford to live in San Francisco. But, so I get this job, and it's in the Western Addition, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is great. I'm going to be a teacher. It's going to be like Saved by the Bell. Zach's going to be there. It's going to be so fantastic. And I get there not knowing anything about the Western Addition, which happens to not be Pacific Heights. And when I get there, no one looks like me. And they hand me the test scores of my students that say, these kids have the worst writing scores in the district. And I'm like, okay, I got a challenge. But I noticed that these same kids are sitting outside of my classroom every day doing this. Now, I didn't have Lauryn Hill, but I don't know if you hear, and I don't know if that was loud enough, but those kids are writing lyrics to songs like you've never heard. And they're telling me these kids can't write? What you're telling me is they can't fit in your box. And it was sad and horrible. And I knew that these kids had this music teacher, and they were doing this out on the playground, and just like this. And this is when Sister Act 2, this is this movie Sister Act 2. Like, I had this classroom. And they were telling me they can't write. They were out at music class, and I had 2 kids who would walk down the hall doing metaphors like you've never heard and lyrics like you've never heard. And I told them every single day when they walked in the classroom, you've got to do something with this. So I changed my curriculum. And I said, instead of doing Emily Post or Emily Dickinson, sorry, this, Emily Post, I don't know if the kids do that. But Emily Dickinson, I'm scratching that, and we're going to look at metaphors. We're going to look at poetry. We're going to look at spoken word. I didn't even know what I was doing with spoken word, but I went and found out about like poetry jams and all of this stuff, and we did that. And my kids were so talented, and they were loving writing. And that year, their test scores in writing went up to the 2nd highest in the district. And it's because I did something that I now know from visiting South Africa is a Zulu word called sawubona. And sawubona is sort of like namaste. It's a spiritual word that says and means, I see you. I see who you are as learners. I respect you, and I'm going to do what I can as part of your community to respect who you are. And I didn't put those kids in a box. And today, you have in your classrooms, in your schools, in your universities, Gen Z, and you have to say to them, sawubona. I can't give you a textbook in a world filled with information. That can be a resource, certainly, but I can't sit with worksheets when these kids have Google and they're like, why isn't my teacher using it? I understand in Beijing why they're not, in Google anyway. But in our other classrooms, we have to really be thoughtful of that. So I'm going to go back for 1 second. Let's get that back. Now, there were 2 kids in my class who I always said, you've got to do something with this. Please, don't let this, in this particular neighborhood, the streets call to them a little bit. And I said to them, please do something with this music. Make something with this. And I left, and I moved to Chicago, as you know, and I never heard from these kids again because the year was 1998. There was no Facebook. They're not going to write me a letter. Kids don't do that, you know, and send it to me in Chicago. So I'm sitting about a year and a half ago, I think. I'm sitting on Twitter because I like Twitter a lot. And it's Friday night, and this comes by, and it says, all I see is translated from Haitian Creole. And then I go by it, and then I go, wait, Ben Franklin Middle School, that's that school I taught at. And this kid is like, I say to him, oh my God, you look just the same as you did. And he says to me, I'm great, and we're having other conversations, and I saw your TEDx. This kid came across my TEDx video. That's crazy talk. And guess who popped up? And you were always dope is good, okay? But anyway, and he says, Ms. Clark, I'm so glad we're continuing to have a conversation. He said, I'm so glad I found you. I don't know if you know, but we did it. We became rappers. And I'm like, you did? No way. And he sends me this video, and I just want to play you a small part of this video. And when I play it, the first person who comes on is the guest artist. They're going to be the 2 rappers that come on in the back. So let's just look at what these 2 kids were able to produce. And I'm not saying because of my 7th grade class, but this is the talent they had.
Money always.
If you could turn up.
My eyes begin to dream my whole life ahead of me. No rent, no bills, that's make believe. Our dreams came true in reality. Won't let life get the best of me. Won't let life rest on destiny. Cause that's not enough. That's what dreams are made of. Made of. Made of. Yeah, yeah. That's what dreams are made of. Even
these are them.
Made of, made of.
Yeah, yeah. No one ever said life would be fair when the cards get dealt. We just trying to get a pair and make dollars off this nonsense here. Money's how we cope with living nightmares. I used to daydream about pushing big work and pushing fly whips up the interstate. Mark 830.
I love watching that. So when I saw that video, I started crying. I'm not crying now because I've seen it enough times, but I'm bawling, and my boyfriend comes back in, and he's like, what's wrong? What's going on? And my boyfriend's not a teacher. He would never understand. I couldn't even explain, these are students I had at night. He'd be like, yeah, whatever, I'm watching basketball. So I'm bawling, and I'm bawling, number one, because as an English teacher, I always told kids that you curse because you can't find a word to substitute in. And if you listen to that, did you hear any curse words? There were none. Now, they're rappers. Other songs have the cursing. But they did it. And these are the people. These kids are the people they told me can't write. It makes me mad today. But he goes, Ms. Clark, I have more. And I'm like, no, I can't take it. I'm trying not to cry. So he's showing me the other songs, but he said, have you heard of Airbnb? And I'm like, yeah, I live in 2018. It was 2018 at the time. Yeah, I've heard of Airbnb. And he said, we have a startup too. Now, if you haven't been to the place where they live and their neighborhood, startups are there for some people. They're not there for this neighborhood. But these kids had the kind of teachers who said, not just me, who didn't live in the box, I believe, and made it so that these kids would think to do something like this. And he said, we have a recording studio that you can come and rent, and it's called Tracked Up, and he sent me this really quick video, and I'll play it for you.
You're a musician, you're an artist, but when you're ready to take your music to the next level, when you're on the road and you need a place that'll give you the right sound, get Tracked Out. It's the world's first database for recording studios that gives you access to the best engineers and the best studios in your area. It makes booking recording time quicker and easier than ever. Now there's nothing between you and good sound. It's just you, a mic, and the music.
I'm so happy. That's one of the other students, writing that script, doing that. Like, I'm so happy when I see this. But the one kid who wrote to me on Twitter, his name was Daniel, and he was the rapper in the back, and the kid in front that you saw is Matt. And Matt, a few months later, while I happened to be in Spain, sent me a message on Facebook. And I was like, when people say they hate Facebook, I'm always like, well, wait till you see this. I struggle with reading this because it just means so much to me as an educator. But I share it with you so that you can see the difference that we make in kids' lives. And I'll do my best. I'm getting better because I haven't, thank you. So I'd always hope to see you again and tell you about our music. After Daniel saw your talk, he told me he found you, and I couldn't wait to send you a message. I want you to know you've helped me find my strengths when I had no one at home to help me do that. Sorry. Other teachers didn't look for our talents the way you did, and I was young and dumb, and I would have fallen through the cracks without you. This is the part, to me, that he could write this next paragraph. As a kid, I knew you were special, but now as an adult, I can see your true talents too. I watch you, yeah. It's a lot. Anyway, I'm going to skip the next paragraph because I don't care about that. But what I want to say to the teachers who told on me all the time, who sat at that school and said, Miss Clark's not doing Ricky Tikki Tavi, and we're doing Ricky Tikki Tavi, I want to say, take that's what flexible is. That's what you do when every once in a while you say, you know what, I'm going to take something and set it aside and find a way to say Salbona to my students. So as I close, we're going to finish really quickly with this. We've learned in a, gosh, that doesn't look right. Let me see something.
Like many 6.
Yep. We've learned we've learned an environment that wasn't like how our Generation Z students are growing up. So how do we change? And this video is a good representation of kind of how you have to change your mindset.
Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen. First attempt riding the bicycle.
All right. So the faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels, every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this.
So, spoiler alert, no one can write it. But this is what he did, and this is what teachers need to do.
I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike, and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control.
So, I'm running out of time because I like to talk, so I went over a little bit, but here's what we need to know. 5 minutes a day, he had to retrain his brain. It took 8 months. With education, it's going to take forever. You're never going to be able to totally get on that path. Maybe you can. I know that sometimes I fall off of it and make a copy or go to the copy machine. And I'm like, whoa, where am I? This is the copy machine. Oh, my God. But we have to retrain our brains. So this is what I say to you at this conference. I'm going to pass on what the gentleman who gave me the one-to-one did to me. So I say to you, to all of you, here's my contribution now. I'm putting this on you. I need you to show the world what technology can do for education. So thank you, and I'm done.